Who was Lilith? Is it true that Adam had another woman before Eve? Where did this woman come from? And why do some people believe the church hid the story of Lilith because of misogyny? First, let's understand why this name, Lilith, became known in the 20th and 21st centuries. At the beginning of the 21st century, the first wave of the feminist movement occurred. Women fought for greater equality. They wanted the right to participate in political life, the right to vote, to study, and better working conditions. The second wave of feminism happened between the 60s and 90s, with a greater focus on sexual freedom, when questions began about Christianity and the Bible. According to the feminist movement of the time, women were treated as an inferior being to men because of an interpretation of the book of Genesis, in which the woman was created through the man, having only the obligation to have children and to serve her husband. Then emerged the story of a woman who was censored in the Bible, and that would shake the foundations of Christianity, and that the oppressive patriarchy removed this story from the Bible to erase sacred feminism. Some symbols of sacred feminism are Mary Magdalene, whose story was changed according to feminists, Asherah, who was supposedly the wife of Yahweh or Jehovah, a tradition that comes from the time of the apostasy of the people of Israel in the past. And finally, Lilith, who supposedly was at the creation of the world in the book of Genesis. There are several versions of the creation of Lilith, one in the Epic of Gilgamesh and another in the Talmud. In the Talmud, the story goes as follows. In the beginning, when the world was still being molded from chaos, God created Adam, the first man, from the dust of the earth. As time passed, God saw that Adam was sad because he was alone, since all the animals had a partner. Wishing that Adam was not alone, God then created a companion for him, also from the earth, in the same way that he created Adam, and this woman was called Lilith. Unlike Eve, who would come later, Lilith was created equal to Adam, with the same essence and substance. She possessed a strong will of her own and an independent mind. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Lilith were supposed to live together and help each other, but soon disagreements arose between them. The discord began over who should have the dominant position in their daily interactions, especially in relation to intimacy. That is, in sexual relations, she would always have to be underneath Adam. Lilith did not accept being subordinate, arguing that, being made from the same earth as Adam, she was his equal. Unable to resolve their differences and determined not to give in, Lilith pronounced the ineffable name of God, and using the power of that sacred name, flew out of Eden. She found refuge on the shores of the Red Sea, a place populated by demons and other fallen creatures. God, seeing that Adam was again alone and sad, sent 3 angels to seek Lilith and persuade her to return. The angels, called Senoi, Sansenoi, and Semangaloth, found Lilith in her new abode among the demons. They warned her that if she did not return, she would be punished by God. However, Lilith refused to return with them, stating that she had been created to cause harm to newborns. As a compromise, Lilith made an agreement with the angels. She would not attack or kill any infant who was protected by amulets bearing the names of the 3 angels. In exchange, the angels granted her permission to live freely. Since then, Lilith is known as the mother of the Lilins, nocturnal demons, and has been associated with legends about spirits that threaten women and children during the night. After that, God created Eve, but this time not from the earth like Adam, but from the rib, so that she could be dominated by him without many questions. Thus, according to feminists, this story was removed from the Bible by ancient religious figures to prevent women from rebelling against men and from being submissive. Defenders of the story of Lilith as Adam's first wife say there are 2 accounts of creation in the book of Genesis. The first account would go from Genesis chapter 1 to chapter 2 verse 3, and the second account would go from Genesis 2 verse 4 to 24. According to these defenders, each chapter was written by a different person. Genesis 1:27 says the following: So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them. That is, the two, man and woman, were created together at the same time. Now, chapter 2, verses 21 and 22 says the following. Then the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And from the rib that the Lord God had taken from man, he made a woman and brought her unto Adam. With these accounts, the defenders of Lilith say the first chapter is about her, and the second chapter was about Eve. Between these two chapters, there was supposedly the revolt of Lilith, who did not want to be dominated by Adam and fled. But what the critics forget is that there were never two accounts of Genesis. For this, it is necessary to study a bit of history. In the ancient Middle East, especially in Egypt, literature from the time of the 18th dynasty and some earlier ones had two accounts of the same story. Unlike today, at that time, in Egyptian culture, two accounts of the same story, told in different ways, were a way to emphasize and facilitate people's memorization. The Bible was written by Moses, who was raised and educated to be an Egyptian prince, so he used this methodology to write the book of Genesis. Therefore, we should never analyze ancient literature, or even the Bible with today's view, but as the writer of that time thought. But you might be wondering, where did this Lilith come from? The truth is that the Holy Bible never mentioned a person called Lilith. The only time the word Lilith was mentioned in the Bible is in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 14. Isaiah makes a prophecy about the fall of Edom, the city of the descendants of Esau. Isaiah speaks poetically about what would happen to this city. The text says, "The wild beasts of the desert shall meet with the wild beasts of the island." Some translations say hyenas. That is, Isaiah means that there will be no people there, only animals, because the place will be abandoned. And the satyr shall cry to his fellow, that is, some mythological animal, will cry to each other. And the night creatures there shall rest and find a resting place for themselves. In the original Hebrew, instead of night creatures, the expression Lilith appears. Translators had difficulty translating this word. Some say that Lilith comes from the word Lila, which in Hebrew means night. The story of Lilith as a person comes from 500 years after Christ, when some Talmudic texts with a tradition speaking of a demon called Lilith emerged. Many of these traditions are from the Babylonian Talmud. Probably some Jews from the time of Babylon copied these texts. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, there was a female demonic being called Lilitu. This demon is briefly mentioned in the poem as an inhabitant of the desert, associated with wild creatures, and appears in the story in a context of danger and threat. Already this story of Lilith as Adam's first wife appears in the year 1000 after Christ in a Jewish mythological document from the medieval period. Thus, according to the Holy Bible, Eve was Adam's only wife, created to be his companion. Lilith is just a late myth, which is a combination of various mythologies. Therefore, we must always study and learn about the Bible and debunk some myths that want to discredit the Holy Bible. Did you like the video? Leave your like and subscribe to the channel. I am trying to make videos in a chronological order of the Bible, so the next video will be about the great fall of Adam and Eve. Let's try to get inside Eve's head and understand what's behind that story.